Noel, welcome back to the Charles Billingsley podcast. We're honored you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be back.
And Adam's walking in here in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and get started with you because I know your time is limited.
Yeah.
But tell us, okay, so crazy, this Helene and now Milton and all the stuff going on. Tell us how the process works with World Help because you're all over the world. It is World Help, not North Carolina Help. And so because of that, when a crisis comes, do you guys just have to shift directions and mindsets and start resending your resources and teams to those places? Or because you knew it was coming, you were ready and or had already shifted? How does it work in your world for this kind of thing?
Yeah, this is what we do. So we're always ready, so to speak. Sometimes it's a little tricky when it sort of starts to feel like there's a crisis in every corner of the world.
Mm,
But I think our role is really what I like to say to empower people to change the world and to do more than we could ever do on our own. So I think trying to keep that the focus when these crisis hits of giving people practical ways to get involved when we just, simply start to feel overwhelmed, especially just with these latest storms in our own backyard. It's just one after another. You feel like you can barely catch your breath. But World Help's partner model is the same internationally and domestically. So when a crisis hits, we have partners on the ground ready to go that we can come alongside and resource them the best way possible to start meeting those needs before the dust even settles in most cases. And that's the same thing we're doing right now in North Carolina. I just got back. I was on the ground a couple of days ago with our partners there. And I think especially with Helene, this has just been so encouraging to see our local community just rally behind this. I think, part of that is it's so close to home. We all, have friends or family or have visited these areas that have been hardest hit and love them and know them for their beauty and some of the touristy things we've done there. And so it felt, I think, a lot more personal to our community. But it has been so encouraging to see so many people want to help. They've dropped off supplies here at our office. We've been able to take trucks of supplies. They've given financially. And, crisis is always hard and so dark, but gosh, it sure does bring out the best of people. And I think at
mhm,
a time when things are so divisive in our country, it's really
mhm,
nice to see people come together because they just want to help their neighbor in their time of need.
mhm.
You've got so many years of doing this, and World Help decades and decades of doing this. And I'm just always curious as you go into a disaster area and you're trying to help all the different communities and people. And is there anything that has surprised you with these storms now that you're going into there? Because from what I'm hearing on the ground, some of the devastation is unbelievable of homes
Mhm.
just being moved down the river and people vanishing and roads gone. But I just want to hear from you. What has surprised you on maybe, different areas of
Mhm.
where you've seen already?
Well, I guess just speaking to Helene, just coming back, what surprised me is, I thought I had seen it all on the news. What surprised me is
Mm,
how hard it is to capture the devastation on the news or
mhm,
in any one video. It's so spread out. It's so spotty in some places, meaning you're driving down and this side of the street, houses are fine, and this side of the street, they're gone.
mm,
Um, and one part of the community seems a little bit untouched, and then you drive up a little bit into a mountain town and it's completely demolished. Another thing in seeing what we saw and talking to people on the ground, like the whole topography of these areas have changed. There's mountains that don't exist anymore, and there's rivers that
mm,
now have a completely different path. Um, We went to
Crazy.
one town that has been on the news a lot. It's right outside of Asheville. It's called Garin Creek. It was really hard hit, and it's one of those towns that you have to weave up those mountain roads that, to some of us feel treacherous on a normal day. And we got about halfway up, and you could tell there had been a mudslide that had just wiped out the entire road right in a curve. So they kind of had
Mm.
to makeshift build a lane, and you're kind of cautiously driving across that, looking out the window, and it's just a complete drop off just to be
Mm.
able to get help to the top where there's a fire station that's sort of like the outpost for the search and rescue teams and all the aid that's being distributed in that area. And one story I heard there, a man that lives in that area, in a moment, he lost his wife and 12 community members washed away in a moment. So
Just like
that's
that.
just one story.
Hmm.
Another story
Mm.
we heard is right after the storm hit, a family walked to one of our partners' distribution centers covered in mud. The only bridge access to them from where they lived to this area had washed away, so they had to walk the whole way. All they had was what they grabbed in that moment. They've literally lost everything again, covered with mud with their kids, but so happy just to be alive. Like they're just happy
Mhm.
they're alive, but they have nothing. And those are the kind of people that our work on the ground is meeting those people in that time of need and just giving them the practical things they need to literally survive another day. There's going to be lots of phases when you respond to a crisis like this, there's lots of phases. And, right now it's those needed supplies to keep them alive. It's going to change to warm winter clothing and blankets. And then it's going to change to helping them rebuild. So there's lots of phases to these crises.
Yeah, and that's one question I had for you, Noel. World Help obviously is there during that first phase, but what about, 6 months from now when it's kind of out of the news and we're on to the next big story? Where does World Help come in to play when the rest of the world has kind of moved on?
Yeah. That's a great question, Charles, because unfortunately, I think the way we're all wired, it's just human nature. When things start to go out of the news, we forget, we move on. And I think that's
Hmm.
the beauty of the World Help Partner model. Our partners, they don't leave, they don't forget. They're still there doing the day-to-day work on the ground. And so I think that's one of the ways we help people not to forget. And then just
Mm.
encouraging people not to forget. The thing I've said this for a while, but it sort of whenever a crisis like this hits, it takes on a new life. And I remember a few years ago in the middle of the pandemic, um, our troops were pulling out of Afghanistan. We all remember watching those images on TV of people grabbing to the planes, desperate to get
Hmm.
out. And
Yeah.
there was all these it felt like a time like this. There's just all this stuff. And I remember like sitting on my couch watching the TV and just whispering under my breath, like, Jesus, can you just come quickly? And I
Yeah.
think I've had some of those moments lately of Jesus, can you just come quickly? Because it just feels so overwhelming. But what I've always tried to encourage people is, in these moments like this, I tend to hear like good, well-meaning people say things like, we just have to remember this is not our home. This is not our home.
Hmm.
And it's true. As Christ followers, this is not our home. We all know where we're going one day. But I think inadvertently, when we say those kind of things in a time of crisis, it's as if we're saying to the people that have truly been impacted, your pain and suffering is not my problem because I have heaven to look forward to. But
Hmm.
the truth is, while this may not be our home forever, our forever home, it is our home right now. And God has called us to join him in that kingdom work. And there are so many ways to help people and give them help and hope in their darkest hour.
Obviously, we're focusing today on the devastation and what people are going through with the hurricanes, Helene, Milton,
And hopefully no more to
hopefully
come.
no more. But we're right in the middle of hurricane season, so this is where we are. But Noel, we've talked to you before, and you guys are on the ground and have been for years now in Ukraine. and Israel and what they're going through. So can you give us an update? I know it's going to be like a 30,000 foot view here, but can you give us an update on what's going on in these two areas so we can kind of stay up to date with that?
Yeah. There's so much politically going on in both of those areas that that is hard to speak to. Our main focus is and always will be the people in need. So we're trying to, just like we are in the storms, we're trying to meet the needs of the people impacted by all those things you just described in the Holy Land and in Ukraine. In Ukraine, this has been going on so much longer than people ever expected. And you have people that have been uprooted from their homes for years now, and those needs continue. But our objective in those political crises is to meet people with help and hope, just like we do anywhere in the world. I always tell people, because I think the hard part with some of these is because they are so political, we sometimes forget the real people involved. And I always tell people our politics may divide us, but our compassion should unite us. And if you focus on that, then I think we keep the main thing the main thing. I'm not saying there's not important political decisions to be made in all of those crises. I'm just saying there are also real people who need the hope of the gospel involved, and that's what we're called to do.
On both sides.
On both sides.
It's really heartbreaking because in the midst of all the craziness, there's just people dying on both sides that
right.
have nothing to do with the decisions of their government, and
right.
It is horrific to see on a lot of levels. But we're just grateful that you guys are there. So give us an example of what it is like that you do in Ukraine, and then also even in Israel, and maybe even some of the surrounding areas. What is it that you're providing there for people?
Yeah. One thing I love to share about our work in Ukraine is through our partners there on the ground, we've established what we call these We Care centers. And there's centers scattered throughout the country where in some ways, like we're talking about with the hurricanes, people can come and get, the very real day-to-day supplies that they need since they've been so uprooted. But in these places, they also get counseling. There's attorneys available to help. As you can imagine, when you've been uprooted, there's so many legal things that have to be taken care of. It's a place where their children can get the help they need. And really, in a lot of ways, they've become little churches that, my hope and prayer is that once the war is over, that these We Care centers who are meeting this needs in a crisis will become the foundations for churches in all of these areas. And that's really our partners on the ground and our vision beyond the war, that we would never have wanted this war to happen, never have wanted all these things to happen to the people of Ukraine, but that this crisis would, in the end, bring so many more people to faith and see a thriving church when it's all over. So kind of looking beyond the crisis. So that's our focus, and we've helped so many people in that way. I was there earlier this year and was able to visit many of those We Care centers in the dead of winter, I might add, and it is really, really cold there. And it was heartbreaking and encouraging all at the same time to see people literally lined up outside these centers all the way around the building, just waiting to get that help they needed for the week to be able to feed their kids and survive. So they're meeting some really great needs.
Oh, yeah. Have you had any of these We Care centers, have they actually developed into some actual churches to this point?
I don't know in the traditional sense of what we would consider a church, but there's definitely people they're gathering, they're sharing the gospel, giving them Bibles, things like that. That has the foundations for those people to continue meeting indefinitely in those areas.
Awesome.
I was able to see World Help on the ground years ago in Macedonia, right on the Macedonian-Greece border when the refugee crisis was going in. And I was there with another group, and I was just so impressed with World Help and the organization that they did, but also that and again, I would ask you if you could speak to this, that you take each crisis, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. At least it looked like that to me. Like you were looking at each crisis and each moment as something unique. How do you do that?
Mhm. Well, I think it goes back to our partner model that this is whether it's a crisis or just day-to-day work fighting against extreme poverty around the world, we choose partners on the ground who are from these countries as much as possible, that know their people and know the needs, and we come alongside them asking what they need. It's not what I think they need. It's not my American version of what I think would make their lives better. It's what they really need to both meet the needs of their people and help evangelize in the most impactful way. And then bringing that domestically, I can give you sort of a real-time example of when I was in North Carolina. One of our main partners there, we had brought down all this aid, and obviously they need that. And they're distributing it as fast as they can. But before I left, I basically asked him a little bit more about what he needed, and what he said he needed. He's like, I need 25 volunteers to come here next week to help me with X, Y, and Z. He said, my people are spent. They've been doing this for a week straight, nonstop. He's like, I need them to be able to go home, check on their own families, check on their own houses that have been damaged, catch their breath. Like they can't do this indefinitely. And so in basically like a 48-hour turnaround, we got him 25 volunteers. Why? Because that's the best way to help. And so I think that's a real-time example just in the past few days, but that's really our attitude around the world, is how can we come alongside you to help you accomplish the vision God has given you for your work.
That's wonderful. Adam has joined us. There he is.
Hi,
Hello.
Adam.
Hello.
Yeah. Hey, Noel.
Hey.
Did you have a question, Adam? You were about to
No, I mean, you guys
You
are,
look like
you
you had
guys
something
know,
on the tip
I
of your
mean,
tongue.
so much information and good things that's happening. I'm just absorbing it. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm always blown away at how you're able to manage all this stuff with, not the world's largest team. But
Yeah.
You guys are lean and mean.
yeah, but
We're
the
lean and mean.
partnerships is, yeah, but the partnerships are really, really key. And when you say partners, just so that our listeners know, it can be anything from a local church to a local, nonprofit organization, like
Mhm.
well, even like like a Samaritan's Purse or something like that. Do you guys partner with other companies or organizations like that, or is it mainly church and individual leaders?
It's different in every context. I think domestically it's going to be more churches and organizations. And then internationally, it's, national partners on the ground that may have a church or a school or an international organization there that we can come alongside and partner with. Some of them are very small and don't even have that kind of official setup. They're just doing a good work in maybe a very remote rural place in India, helping a group of orphans, and we're able to come alongside them in that way.
When you have something like this, when you have like you were talking about the breadth of the devastation from the hurricanes, how do you triage this? How do you say, because, we can look at something and be overwhelmed by this and go, wow, where can I even make a difference? How do you look at it and go, this is where we're going to make a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, where do
I
you
think-
start?
Again, by joining hands with people in the middle, at ground zero, I think that makes the triaging a bit helpful, and listening. What is it you need most? So today they need water. Tomorrow it might be warm clothes. One of the things I heard on the ground in North Carolina, which is why we're not just getting donated supplies, we're also raising money, is they told me one of their needs, like right now, is more heavy equipment, things like chainsaws. They're like burning out all their chainsaws by all this
Yes.
search and rescue work. So they need the funds to be able to go buy that equipment. So it's just paying attention every day. What are the biggest needs? And then trying to tell the story in the most effective way so that people will want to get involved and respond and see that they really are making a difference.
Well, in one thing that's wonderful about when you give to World Help, that the partnerships are already intact, and people can give to a specific area. If your heart is for what's happening in Florida or what's happening in North Carolina or what's happening in Israel, whatever, World Help will take that gift and give specifically to that need. And World Help is also very good. Noel, you're very good at breaking down into, I guess I could say, groupings
Yeah.
of gifts. Like, and sometimes it's the sponsorship of child. This is per month, or this is what it costs to send a container to Ukraine.
Yeah.
What do you have going on right now where people can give specifically to a one of those needs, and where can they send it? How much, and all that?
I am so glad you asked, because right now we have actually a matching gift going on to help with the hurricane relief. And so because of a generous donor, we're able to match gifts up to $150,000, which means
Oh, wow.
normally every $50 you would give would help one person in the aftermath of the hurricane with those much needed supplies that they need. But because of the matching gift, every $50 you give will help two people, which I think is pretty incredible and really just gives a practical way for all of us to do something.
Mm.
And if there are people like you talk about partners on the ground, what if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, I'm a partner. I could be a partner with World Help on the ground. We're here. Because I know I work with Southern Baptist Disaster Relief a lot, and we're always looking for those people who are embedded in the community. How do they get in touch with you for that?
Well, we are always looking for people like that, especially in a time of crisis. That is a time where we band together with people. So tell them to call me, tell them to reach out. But we would love to hear if there's people that think we could be more effective by partnering together. We're all about that.
And if one wants to call you or reach out, where do they go and how do they do that?
If you go to worldhelp.net right now, the hurricane relief is top front and center, and it gives you a really clear way of how you can get involved in that today.
Awesome. Worldhelp.net. You'll find there what all they're doing. You'll find all your options for where to give, how to give. You'll find phone numbers, whatever. I know this, World Help is one of the top organizations in the world when it comes to just helping people, because you know that when you give there, that's exactly where they're doing it. I mean, they have a small streamlined team here in Lynchburg, Virginia, where 90% of the people they employ or partner with are not here. They're out and about in the world on the ground at like Noel said, at ground zero. So I would highly encourage you to give to this organization and to do all you can to help them help others, especially if you're not able to get out or can't go somewhere. Let's at least send some funds to help them do what they need to do.
I heard somebody was like, well, I want to do something tangible. And then somebody else said, well, I think money's pretty tangible.
Yeah, money works.
Money's very helpful in a lot of different ways. It can go a lot of different places.
Exactly. Very helpful.
Mm-hmm. But, also there may be somebody like you mentioned, Brandon, who wants to volunteer your time. Man, let World Help know. They'll put you to work.
Well, it was just funny this week, Noel, I might still say, there is someone who is close to our family who has a farm and they have heavy equipment. And they're like, look, I would love to go down there for a week and take backhoes and all these different things and help people. But he didn't know who to talk to and who. So that's, you have people like that, farmers and people who would love to just help and say, show me where.
Yeah. And I think we're definitely in the coming weeks going to have a need for more volunteers, especially people with like one of the things they need is people who could drive forklift for this trip that we're down. So there are some specialized things they need people. So again, if that's something that people are interested in and volunteering their time, they can reach out to us as well at worldhelp.net, and we can help facilitate the best way for them to be hands-on.
Is there an ongoing list? And I realize you mentioned daily, it's kind of adapting and changing, but is there somewhere, maybe you have it on the website, where people can go on and see the needs, whether it be volunteers, whether it be equipment, whether it be money to purchase equipment, or specific items they can pick up when they go to the supermarket?
Yeah. A lot of it is on our website. I would also encourage them to follow us on social media, on Instagram or Facebook, because those needs are changing daily. So we'll update them more there. So the group we have on the ground now is getting some more up-to-date information. Okay, we know they needed water and hygiene supplies and diapers and all that stuff, but what's the next phase? We want to make sure we're sending them the most helpful things possible. You know, as they get electricity back up, as hopefully the water system starts to improve, then those needs will change. So the best place is probably social media for updated lists on what those supplies are if you want to drop them off at the office.
Okay, great.
And one other question I had was for locals here in Lynchburg area. You say you have a place people can actually drop off clothing and supplies and things like that?
And they have already, Charles. It's been overwhelming how much stuff people have dropped off. So if you come by our office in Forest, no matter when you come, there's some tents set out outside. Sometimes there's a truck. The truck is in North Carolina now taking some supplies, but there's tables and a tent right outside my office right here. And you can just pull in, put your stuff on the table and drive out. Super, super quick and easy. And it's up there all the time.
That's fantastic. Okay. Great.
Thank you so much, Noel.
Yeah, I mean, this was really informative and helpful. And we just need you to know again, Noel, how much we appreciate you and love you and World Help and all that you're doing to help the world.
Well, appreciate you guys. We couldn't do it without you. We consider you some of our partners as well. So thank you for help sharing the message.
Hey, it's our pleasure. We're going to keep giving and keep letting the world know.
Thank you.